that is what makes the Progress Seminar special. Each of you bringing and sharing your expertise and perspective with everyone else. We're so proud of the Progress Seminar. It's an event that's unique to our county alone and one which other counties everywhere would like to emulate. The success of the Progress Seminar is not possible without the generous support of our sponsors. We want to thank all the sponsors who recognize the value of what a weekend like this can accomplish. We appreciate their support so much. First of all, I would like to thank our Progress Seminar 48 co-chairs. Assemblymember Kevin Mullin. San Mateo County Supervisor Carole Groom. President and CEO of SAMCEDA, Rosanne Foust. The President of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Don Horsley. Our signature sponsor for the 2017 Progress Seminar, Facebook, and representing Facebook, we have Michael Matthews, State Policy Director. Michael, where is he? Okay. Fergus O'Shea, Director of Campus Facilities. All right. Juan Salazar, Public Policy Manager. There he is, hey Juan. And Lewis Knight, Forward Development Manager of Facebook. Our Progress Seminar principal sponsor, Comcast, and we have Ted Girdner, Vice President of Business Services. Recology, our Saturday evening dinner sponsor, Mario Puccinelli, VP and Group Manager. Pacific Gas and Electric, one of our premier sponsors, Bill Chang. Pat Mapelli from the Public Affairs with Cargill. Wade Painter, President and CEO of San Mateo Credit Union. And Sherry Sager, Chief Government and Community Relations Officer, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital. And sponsoring our opening general session this morning, Kaiser Permanente, we have Stacy Wagner, Public Affairs Director. And Sheila Gibson, Senior VP and Area Manager. We have our keynote panelists today, Brian Annis, Undersecretary, California State Transportation Agency. Grace Crunican, General Manager of Bay Area Rapid Transit, BART. And will be moderated this morning by Jim Hartnett, CEO, General Manager of Caltrain, SAMTRANS, and San Mateo County Transit Authority. Thanks, Jim. All right. As you can see, we have a lot of people involved and a lot of work has gone into this. In your program, you will see that we have everyone's bios. This will allow us to save time during the breakouts and general sessions, giving more time to the actual conversation and keynote speakers. At this time, it's my honor, and I would like to thank our Progress Seminar co-chairs, Rosanne Foust, Carole Groom, and Kevin Mullin, for their hard work and fantastic job that they have done, along with their committee, in putting this year's program together. Now it is my pleasure to invite Rosanne up here to get us started. Please join me in welcoming Rosanne Foust.
Good morning, everyone. How are you today? Is everybody feeling good? That was sort of a really weak good morning. How about good morning? Good morning. So we're going to do the Progress Seminar version of speed dating right now. And I'm going to introduce a group of people. And for the names that I say, could you please stand up and stay standing as I go through these names? Sherry Ambrose, Tom Ames, Brian Annis, Georgia Antonopoulos, Peter Austin, Mark Berman, Maria Castillo, Isabella Chu, Shomara Cisneros, Susan Stewart Clark, Heather Cleary, Michael Cohen, Grace Crunican, Sims Duncan, Joe Fitzgerald, Christian Foote, Robert Frary, Hilary Gans, Alain Gilbrecht, Sheila Gilson, Giselle Hale, Victor Davis Hanson, Tony Harris, Josh Hartnett, Nancy Shea, Bruce Ives, John Paul Jewell, Sean Callie Rye, Kathy Kleinbaum, Joe La Mariana, Jaslyn Lamadora, Marjorie Lassen Hock, Jeremy Lips, Bill Lowell, Dr. Vera Jacobson Lundberg, David Johnson, Nancy McGee, Mike Mahoney, Samantha Maloa, Jocelyn Manalo, Paul Markowski, Michael Matthews, Stan Maupin, Kimbra McCarthy, Mike McGillis, Jonathan Meyer, Kevin Mocato, Jamila Moore, Clayton Nall, Brian Nieder, Liza Normandy. Are you all standing up? Because I'm not seeing all these people standing up. Jeffrey Peterson, Sebastian Petty, Rebecca Prosen, Catherine Ralston, Elizabeth Renteria, Jerry Roberts, Eric Rodriguez, Zach Ross, Russ Arnold, Armando Sanchez, Menka Sethi, Tony Cyrus, Charlotte Stallworth, Dr. Mary Streschley, Leora Tanawako, and I hope I pronounced that right, Leora, Phil Traunstein, Brian Uller, Victoria Verasing, Diana Wilson, Linda Wolin, and Sharon Yang. These are your first-time Progress Seminar attendees. It is really, really important for those people that were standing, all of you in the room that have been here before and have done this, you have a responsibility to engage them, to talk to them, and to make them feel a part of this Progress Seminar. So please reach out to them and stop talking. Okay? That was hard enough for me to list all of those people this early in the morning. At lunch today, we will be announcing all the elected officials. So we're going to go through another period of speed dating. But what I'd like to do right now is introduce my partner in crime who has served for 8 years on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, 9 years on the City Council of San Mateo, as well as a distinguished career at Mills Peninsula. It is with great pleasure, I absolutely adore this woman, Carole Groom.
Well, let me offer my good morning and thanks for being here, and I know you're going to love these next 2 days. Going to learn a lot and meet a lot of people and have a great time. So let me kick off our morning conversation about transportation, something that you all probably care a little bit about. We have 3 excellent speakers this morning, and I'll introduce them to you before we get going. Brian Ennis is the Undersecretary of the California State Transportation Agency. He was appointed by Governor Brown in 2013. Prior to his appointment, he served as Deputy Secretary for Transportation at the Business Transportation and Housing Agency. He served in various positions for the Senate Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review, including Deputy Staff Director, Principal Consultant. He also served in various positions at the California Department of Finance, including Principal Program Budget Analyst. He's also been an adjunct professor of economics at the American River College and an economist for the Bureau of Labor Statistics at the U.S. Department of Labor. He holds a bachelor's degree in political economy of natural resources from the University of California at Berkeley, and a master's degree in economics from the University of Washington. Our second panelist is Grace Crunican. She was appointed General Manager of the San Francisco Bay Area Rapid Transit District by the BART Board of Directors on August 31st, 2011. She oversees a staff of 3,100 full-time employees, a $15 billion transportation infrastructure. The Board of Directors selected her because of her 32 years of experience in the public transportation industry, her proven leadership abilities, and her focus on providing safe and reliable transportation services for all Bay Area communities. Prior to coming to BART, she was director of the Seattle Department of Transportation, She was also the director of the Oregon Department of Transportation. Her Washington, D.C. experience has included being the deputy administrator for the Federal Transit Administration from 1993 to 1996. She holds a bachelor's degree from Gonzaga University and an MBA from Willamette University. Our moderator today will be somebody well known to all of you, Jim Hartnett. He's the general manager and CEO of the San Mateo County Transit District, a post that includes running SAMTRANS, the Transportation Authority, and Caltrain. Mr. Hartnett, longtime attorney in Redwood City, a member of the Redwood City City Council, a member of the High Speed Rail Board of Directors, and a long-time leadership role in Redwood City and the County of San Mateo. Will you please welcome our morning panelists?
Did I get this right?
You got it right.
Okay.
Good morning. I can't tell you how privileged I feel to be here with Brian and Grace. When you hear their resumes, it's apparent they have trouble keeping a job. They've
Thanks, Jim.
been around doing a lot of different things. But they've got great experience both at the state and regional level. And there's so much that they can share with us, and we have so little time. So I'm going to get right into it and ask Brian a few questions first, and then Grace will probably correct them on a couple things.
That's right.
So Brian, we've had really historic legislation passed recently in SB1
Right.
that required 2/3 vote of the legislature. There's, I think, a lot of misunderstanding as to what actually was enacted, what wasn't, and what's to come. Can you talk to us a little bit about what just happened?
Well, sure. And first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm happily filling in for Secretary Brian Kelly. Maybe as a sign of his wisdom, I'll tell you he had very much hoped to be here, but his son is deciding what college to go to, so he had a very important call to do family business this weekend, and I really appreciate you allowing me to substitute for him so he could do that. SB1, a very big deal for California. I was thinking, what's the topic since on SB1? Senate Bill 1 will significantly improve transportation in our state, in our communities, and thank you very much for making that happen. And there's many, many people to thank because it was so close. I can tell you, watching the vote on the final night, the days going up to that, we did not know that was going to occur. So, of course, primarily we thank those that actually voted for it. I see Assemblymember Mullin here. Assemblymember Berman, I think, is here as well. So those elected officials that made this very historic vote, thank you. But at the same time, I know there was really an army of people in communities across the state that were making the case for this legislation. Members ask reasonable questions. Is this going to help my community? You know, what's my community going to get out of this? And really, for this to have successfully passed, one of the necessary ingredients was business leaders, local elected officials communicating with their the state elected officials that our community needs this. So for those of you that might not know, let me just throw out a few things about what it is. It's really that historic generational commitment to keeping the investment in our transportation system. And this one, in my view, was really done the right way. And let me talk about why I think it was the right way. One, it's not the flashy projects necessarily, but the real necessary ones. It's the repaving of the roads and the fixing of bridges, cleaning culverts that run under our roads so when the big storm hits, we don't see the road wash out. About 2/3 of the money goes to maintaining, fixing our roads and highways. Another thing that was important as the bill moved through the legislature, of course, we had two transportation chairmen that worked very hard over multiple years, Assemblymember Frazier, Senator Bell. one of the things they knew was we had to also touch on capacity, because we know our communities have some key corridors where people are getting from home to work and back. And some of these corridors are really clogged to much beyond capacity. So SB1 also includes significant capacity money, but it's done, in my view, very smartly. So we have a competitive transit program that in the past has focused on these key regional systems like Caltrain and BART. We have what we call a congested corridor program for these most congested corridors to look multimodally at what the best solution is to increase that capacity and then maintain it as population might continue to grow. So that could be additional investments on a transit line, commuter bus, additional highway lanes, but where those come in, trying to maintain that capacity at a high level through things like HOV lanes or high occupancy toll lanes. So there's a lot in there. Jim and I were talking a little bit about some of the myths, because there have been some things in the newspaper recently about what the bill does, and we might mention a few of those. Maybe others will come up as we continue the discussion. But
Brian, I'm surprised you don't rely on what you read in the newspaper.
Well, I'll just dispel one of them now. The one myth I saw recently in the paper was this was a secret plan to fund boats and parks. So I can maybe dispel that one and explain it a bit. When people buy gasoline, primarily it's for cars they use on roads, but we have boaters that also buy gasoline to put in their boats and use in recreational areas. And we have people that have dirt bikes and go use their dirt bikes in parks and outdoor areas. So those folks are buying gas not for streets and roads. So we thought it was fair to return that money to those users. We sort of feared the counter argument that we were taking the money from boaters and off-road people and diverting it to roads. So where there's some new tax revenue coming in from gas purchase for these off-road uses, we're properly, as we have historically done, returning it to some of those recreational uses. So maybe that's myth number one, and I'll end there so we get grace in the conversation.
Well, actually, from what you've described in the bill, I know there's a lot of things that San Mateo County and our region are going to be eligible for. I have my eyes on a couple things, the corridor investment, the commuter rail investment, the bus investment. But Bart, what's in it for Bart, Grace? And heck,
You're
why do you,
first you get first dibs on it, and anything that's left over, I get access to. Is that what you're telling me?
yeah. And I was wondering, why do you need it? You just did a bond thing. Don't you get billions of dollars from that?
We did just do a bond thing. We passed a $3.5 billion reinvestment in the system, which very much parallels the efforts that the state legislature did. And I want to give props here to the Assemblymember and Jim Bell, Senator Bell from our area as well, did a really good job, as well as Assemblymember Frazier. There's a lot of leadership there. One thing that I just wanted to tag on, if that's okay.
Sure.
One thing you didn't mention is that the bill is indexed, and the gas tax will be indexed over time. And if we had done that in all of us, I was the state DOT head for 5 years, and if we had done that, 20 years ago, then the tax you thought you'd pay would be keeping up with us, and so would be keeping up with a lot of what's done. And so I give a lot of credit to the leadership that came up with that idea. For BART, we have some of the same sources you have. There's pots that we can compete from. It's meant a lot to us. We have a $35 million hole in our operating budget this year, and even this year we will be getting enough money to fill about $14 million of that through the STA money that comes in. And so for BART, we do a lot. We're a 77, I think we do a fare box recovery of about 77%. We could pause there. Jim, what's your fare box recovery?
When you count advertising and other revenue.
No, just your fare box recovery, honey. What's the fare box recovery straight up?
70%.
Okay, and with the buses?
We're not talking buses.
I see.
Yeah. But we want to compare each other on a rail line. Yeah.
I put in my $3.5 billion. What have you done locally here, Jim?
Oh,
the crowd's like, wait a minute.
You're going to have to stay for one of the panels today.
I see.
Yeah, not the pot one. the transportation one.
Okay. So for BART, what it means is there's a steady flow of money that will help us in our base operations. That's very good. And there's a steady flow of money, a smaller amount, but that will help us in our capital operations. And that's been important because, and this is the part you corrected, but the state has not really lived up to its fair share over the last, 10, 12, whatever years it has been. And so it's good because I think what's happened for BART anyway is BART has upped its fares, upped its parking rates, passed the voters were very good to us to give us the money to reinvest in the system. And in doing so, we've done the self-help thing, even though we're not a self-help county. We've worked with our self-help counties and done that. And so I think it's good that the state is now getting its base in. And together we need to go to the feds and make sure that the feds get their base in. Because transportation, whenever you do a major transportation project, you are usually using 4 to 6 different sources of funding, if not 25 sources of funding, some of them beyond the transportation itself. And so it's very important that we keep those monies flowing at the state, at the federal level. And I see this bill as the state owning up to that and doing an excellent job stepping up to the plate. So we'll have little pots of money that we can compete after you're through with the pot. If there's anything left over from BART, we'll slip our application in, okay?
We'll be happy to support you.
Okay, and likewise.
So, Grace, every now and then someone says, there's so many transportation agencies around the Bay Area. Why isn't there one, or why don't they work closer together? What's your evaluation of the transportation landscape with all the transportation agencies in the area?
Well, I would say there's so many school districts around. Why don't you just consolidate all the school districts and we'll have one? And people are saying, no, I want local control. And that's really what they want at their transit system as well. They want to know where their dollars are going, and they want to see their buses or their rail lines go within their area. And there's a different philosophy. I serve 5 counties, soon to serve a 5th, that is, and yours is one of them, San Mateo. But the philosophies are very different inside the 3 districts that have a tax base and are represented on the board that support BART on an ongoing basis rather than kind of a special relationship. And the philosophy in San Francisco is extremely different than the philosophy in Contra Costa County. Even though we're all in one kind of blue bubble here in the Bay Area, the nuances come up at the grassroots level when you're dealing with projects and basic taxation. So I think the reason that there are so many districts is that they reflect the politics of the area. It's not the transit properties that are the issue, it's the local control that is the issue. And I think that's what people want, is local control. And then in the case of BART, we have this contractual relation with San Mateo, and we will have a contractual relationship with San Jose, and you get discrete services for us, and we offer those, and then we stay out of your way and you offer other services. But what I think the audience should know is that we do a lot of coordination. There's a lot of intergovernmental coordination. Jim and I know each other, so much so that I'm very grateful to Rosanne for taking care of him in the off hours, because I have duty some of the time at these, big group meetings, and I know what she's doing here. By the way, you cleaned up really well today, Jim.
Thank you, Grace.
But we have monthly meetings.
Hey, Brian, help me out here.
No. Let me just finish this thought. He's not going to get into this. I can take you both on this. We have monthly meetings where we coordinate on the transportation side, and we are, I don't want to call it making deals because it sounds bad, but we are trying to figure out problems at the stations, on the funding. BART put $38 million into the Caltrain deal, largely because we were grateful to get out of that's a small expense to have it taken care of. But because we see the regional need, we see the coordination that's necessary at the stations, but behind the scenes on the operations. And when we closed our tunnel to do some very amazing repairs over a 3-day period, we had bus drivers from San Mateo, from San Jose, from all over the place, and it was a great coordinated effort, and we needed it because we don't run any buses, so we work very hard with our bus company. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that you just don't see out in public that keeps the coordination going, and I think a lot is made of the districts, but I think if you just keep that school district analogy, and there's no one calling for a consolidation of all the schools in the 5-county area. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, Brian, is there a state view of consolidation of transit agencies? And I know there's a state rail plan coming up pretty soon as well.
Right. I think that there is a greater challenge to coordinate when you have so many local entities, but as Grace said, clearly that's understandable with a lot of the local concerns and community involvement we have in California. But we do try to bridge that at the state level in several ways. We've really pushed to establish this robust state funding program that's competitive and not formulaic. Grace mentioned some of the state transit assistance money that's a formula share, and it's very important for the stability, I think, to have real knowable numbers from year to year so you can plan for your maintenance and other things. But we think it's very important to have this strong competitive program too, and really as an incentive to drive some of this coordination. You know, we've tended to focus on projects where multiple transit systems meet. And that's, as I mentioned last round, there was a lot of focus around that San Jose Diridon station because you have a future BART connecting with the electrified, soon-to-be electrified Caltrain system, and then future high-speed rail, ACE train, and I'm forgetting one. Oh, the Capitol Corridor.
Yeah.
So, you know, you really have these regional hubs for transit that are important, but you also have other connections along the system. And because we get a lot of this funding from the Cap and Trade Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, we're also very attuned to projects that significantly might grow ridership. And so, you know, that's the way that the state's trying to be positive and a good partner in helping develop more partnership, more coordination, more integrated ticketing and scheduling among the transit agencies. And then, as Jim mentioned, we brought on at the Transportation Agency a rail expert, Chad Edison, who some of you may know. He's been a consultant. He's worked for the Federal Railroad Administration, worked for Amtrak for a while. So somebody that really understands transit and rail and the opportunities and also the constraints. So in the coming weeks, we hope to get out a draft state rail plan. And we think it'll be significantly different than the last version and really try to speak to this strategic planning and integration, not just of intercity services, which is what our last plan did, but really delve into those commuter rail systems as well and speak to how these systems can best work together to grow ridership significantly, and in doing so, take some pressure off our highways, reduce our pollution, and so we want to ask you to take a look at that when that comes out in the coming weeks. We'll, as we do with these things, put it out in draft form and welcome public comment. But we're excited to have started this effort in this administration and now see the fruit of this, and hopefully everyone can again take a look and give us comments on whether we're kind of hitting that connectivity and that integration opportunity correctly.
Yeah, and for the train operators in the region, they'll be looking at, are you hitting the dollars correctly? And that's because it's a big deal for all of us. But the marketplace is changing for transportation with technology, potential of autonomous vehicles, our private ride-sharing companies, the Ubers and Lyfts in the world. Grace, how do you see that changing what we do? Or do you see it changing what we do?
I do see it changing some, and I don't think we know the answers to the questions just yet. We are trying to coordinate with some of the shared ride providers to understand if there's you talked about coordination. Is there a coordinated drop-off? Is there a coordinated fare? Is there a discount? Parking spaces structured parking costs us over $50,000 a space to provide. And when you go to the BART station, usually you pay $3 a day. I'm not going to pay off that, if you're just talking about the proposition there. On the other hand, people can't get to the BART station. The complaints we get are people can't get in. So if you can imagine a bus having a kind of a fixed route through a neighborhood without a driver in it that just goes through and scoops up 15 people and drops them off at the BART station, goes back and scoops up another 15 people and brings them in, and the riders are paying extra for that fare, but they're not paying for any parking, and I'm not providing any parking structures, there may be a way for that automated vehicle to play a role. In the interim, there's the shared ride to play a role. But if there's just a bunch of mini taxis operating out there. Mini taxis just cause more congestion, okay? So it's an interim step. We're dealing with it now, but I think over the long haul, you can't deny progress, right? Progress is in this room. It's represented, by all the companies that are here. And so what we need to do is engage that. And we have something, there's an app called Scoop, and you clock in before 9 o'clock at night, and you say, I'd like to go from here to there, and they match you with some, and they get back to you quickly with a match. And then in the morning, and maybe you don't usually go into work, but in the morning they scoop you up and come to the BART station, and if you're at Dublin Pleasanton, this is we give you a parking space. I don't know if they pay for it or not, but there's a place reserved, and you've picked up 3 or 4 people on your way in. That sort of iterative step, we're just experimenting with to see what's there. But in spite of all that, we're losing ridership at the airports, both airports. The shared rider are having our lunch there. And we have some interest in that mutual. I guess you don't have any interest. I guess I'm on my own.
Actually, it affects our bus ridership because
Okay.
when BART ridership is down in San Mateo County, so is our bus ridership.
I see. So anyway, we're losing ridership there, but that's the short-term story. The question is, can I work with folks to get a long-term story that keeps people on BART? Because it's just an option. I'm not trying to compete with the car. It's just an option. But on the Bay Bridge, I carry almost twice as many people as the Bay Bridge carries on BART. Not personally, of course, but and so we play an integral role there. And so I think we have to go back and forth and see how these can work, and it keeps them open for we're all in this together,
Right.
providing transportation at the peak period, particularly.
Right. Jim, you may have some thoughts on this too from your role, but it is interesting how this may evolve. That first mile, last mile question. If some of these other services, bike share, this whole suite of new things, whether that does allow some of the transit operators to be more focused on just the key routes, the key primary routes, and reduce and partner with some of these other entities to do that first mile, last mile. And in doing so, perhaps, with the focus on the key routes for buses, ways to shorten that trip, different ways for segments, perhaps with bus-only lanes or the bus rapid transit type systems, or ways to really improve that service so you're on time competing again with the cars a little bit more, that those buses are in that same traffic. But if there's a few segments with some exclusive bus areas, or the signal synchronization with the traffic lights, different things like that, I think there's a lot of opportunities there as well.
We have received a grant for signal synchronization that will help us on our El Camino route. So we're looking to that to help increase the ridership, because it'll be a more timely ride. But one of the things that I worry about is technology getting so far out ahead of us that we never catch up. As an agency, we'd like to have an office of innovation and really embrace the change around us and get ahead of it, so that we understand how to incorporate things in our services, so we understand what the marketplace is like. But we can't really, as one agency, have an office of innovation that's really fully funded and really can get its arms around things. And so I think we need some regional cooperation to work together, to pool our resources, and maybe there'll be some state funds available, because it's going to pass us by. We're going to be passed by if we don't get our arms around the changing nature of transportation through technology, autonomous vehicles, and the TNCs and all of that. Are there any state thoughts on how to really embrace the change and distribute the information statewide so that we're ahead of the game rather than behind?
It's a good question. Thinking back to where I started with SB1 and myths, I saw one criticism was too that another secret plan to divert money to universities. That's another area where the bill directs about $5 million a year to the UC transportation institutes, and it's really for that reason you mentioned. I think there's another $2 million a year that would go to the CSU institutes like Mineta at San Jose State. But Those are areas where I think you have a lot of research, both the empirical research on what's actually happening out there and trying to figure out why, why some of the transit ridership is down on different services, but also really that technology component. What are some of the opportunities there, and of course you have the students in those graduate school programs that go on to work for a lot of the firms around this area, kind of building and improving upon those apps. So that is a challenge, and events like this and research and others are how we try to keep up with it, coordination with industry, but. I think the future still in many ways is a bit of an unknown in these areas. There's the technology certainly going to drive some opportunities, but what all those are and how all those play out is unknown.
I have many more questions for each of you, but I'd like to also invite the audience if there are questions during our remaining minutes here. We have a hand up, but there will be a microphone passed around, I think. We have one. Sure. So microphone's coming.
I think you're supposed to make a donation.
Good morning. My name is Gina Pampin. I'm the Vice Mayor of Millbrae. Grace, you talk about coordination and communication. We find in our area that BART staff has meetings, but the end result is no coordination. And you talked about reduced ridership at the airport. San Mateo County has the connectivity and the intermodal center there, and BART cuts down on their rides to the airport. It's really counterintuitive for people to think they can count on BART to go to SFO and the 30 million plus riders from SFO to take BART when the trains don't run regularly. They take a side way in and out. What we would love to see is more of the SFO air train coming into the Millbrae station area so that they can access BART and Caltrain, and maybe in the future high-speed rail. The interconnectivity is not happening, nor is the coordination with San Mateo County. I have been to one of your meetings, and one member from the BART board has been to San Mateo County that I know. But another BART board member is basically of the opinion, why would anybody want to go to San Mateo County? And all of this is extremely frustrating to us, considering what our region contributes to the economy of the Bay Area. So it's just a deep concern.
Is
And
the
I like the
specific question
questions.
about coordination? Is that?
Well, the coordination with BART, and if you want to increase the ridership at the airports, it needs to be done through all of the other transit providers. And thank you, Jim, for asking the tough questions here. I appreciate it.
So
Well, should we defer that to Brian?
Yeah, would you like to take that one? I'll take that one. How about
Okay.
that? It is tough to coordinate. You have a split board too. I might add. Millbrae goes back and forth on the votes there. So it's been a tough one for BART to coordinate with. And so we are definitely interested in the ridership. We're interested in the airport, and we've talked a little bit about that shuttle and how poorly it operates. When you're trying to go in and having to go to San Bruno and back. I think it doesn't make any sense. And so I think it's worth looking at in that regard. And then we have the development around the station that's also been tough to, kind of get through. But we are working it through. There is a plan that's, I think, at the city of Millbrae, and they are trying to pull off the rest of the study that's needed to move ahead on coordination there. So it's something we have to work with. We have, I think we serve 27 cities and 5 counties. And so I'm not surprised that we missed one, but we're trying to hit better on that on the coordination side and definitely get in sync with what the goals are of the community, particularly around the station. Transit-oriented development is something we have to get right, and I don't think the region has really gotten it right yet. And I see that even as we go down to San Jose, I think there's parking ratios around one of the stations that's like 4 spaces for every 1,000 feet of office space or retail or something. And if you've got access to transit within a quarter mile, particularly if you've got it right adjacent to the station, one of the things we need to do, since there's so many local elected officials here, is continue to reinforce the investment we have, whether it's Jim's Caltrain or BART or the others. And that is, you don't just build transit. Transit doesn't happen. Transit happens with a density that makes sense and with a game plan on housing and jobs and a balance there and access from both sides. And so it is tough, and the values of the community have to be reflected. That's why we have different transit systems, I think. And as we go through 27 different communities, there are different values. When you're in Lafayette and Orinda, there's a different approach than there is in San Leandro, or if you're at the MacArthur BART station in Oakland. And there's different results as a result of that. And so the more we can reinforce that, the more we're able to liberate the highways for those that have to use their car. It makes the transit option more valuable. And Gina just pointed out that we haven't hit the mark all the way there.
We do have a representative from our organization on the station area planning group, so we're happy to have that. Other questions from the audience? I got plenty, but I'd like, yes, in the back. The right hand. I think it was the right hand that went up.
Hey, all right.
Wow, we're really getting advanced here. Wayne Lee from the city of Millbrae, bookends. A while ago, and we noticed that when you go around the world, you see that transit is becoming a destination, not only just a place to get on the train and go places, and then come back and then go to your house, but it's become a destination. Like you can go and drop off your dry cleaning, you can eat, you can go to some really fancy restaurants, you can do shopping, you can do everything around the transit centers. And I'm just kind of wondering, what is BART's plan about making it kind of a destination where you can add the restaurants and the amenities that people really need? So then it can become more of a, not just, do you get more ridership that way? People see it's convenient, and I think it just feeds the whole system. But I'd like to find out when you plan to do that.
We just adopted a couple of months ago the transit-oriented development policies that are probably as progressive as I've seen in the country, really. And so we are we're going to be in the business of saying no to some developments because they're not, if you will, dense enough, tall enough, diverse enough with what's there. So I think the articles you'll read in the paper as time goes on is, BART's a bad guy for not going along with it. And that's because we've realized we own some very valuable land, which people are parking their cars on right now. But over time, I haven't been to Hong Kong myself, but Hong Kong they make money off the development that's around their station, and that gets reinvested into the maintenance of their system. And that's exactly the model in some small way that I think we have at BART. So we've put our standards out there, and we've made it clear as to what we're looking for future developments. And then as developments come in, if they don't meet those standards, we're prepared to say, no, we're not going to go that route. And so that will help shape some of our conversations with the cities and the communities around the stations. It's also very important because the Plan Bay area counts on 38% of the housing and 33% of the job, 35% of the job, something like that, to be within a half mile of a BART station. So the most immediate property is the property BART owns. We don't own all the land within a quarter mile or a half mile of the station. But if that Plan Bay area is going to pull out, we've got to get our act together around those stations. They're access points. They're just like interchanges on a freeway when you're driving long distance. The action happens at the interchange, and the action's happening at BART. So if we allow two-story development there, and some places, we have an airport in Millbrae. We've got some caps there, and there's other places where there's some other logistics. But if we allow 2 stories to develop on the BART property as opposed to 20 stories, then those buildings are going to be there for 50 years. We've really cut ourselves off for the next 50 years, and the Bay Area is not saying, hey, let's stop growing anytime soon. So we have a real obligation, I think, and our policies reflect that. I'd be happy to send them to you, Mayor, because there's a big shift that's gone on at the agency.
We at Caltrain have to work on that as well. There's the potential station redevelopment in San Jose. We're all going to be there, BART, high-speed rail, and us. So this is a big deal for all of us. I know we're just about out of time, so what I'd like to do is just ask one last question, a very brief answer. And this is a very fair question, so I know you'll be able to.
Sounds like it's going to be
Answer.
Are
unfair
you going to
with
have
that
to answer
setup.
it too?
So tell me, what do you predict the national administration is going to do on transportation investment?
That's a good question, Jim. I have been scanning the horizon for a $1 trillion investment package, but I have not seen one coming down yet that's visible. We're certainly disappointed that we've seen the opposite in the short term, some disinvestment, some reductions of transportation funding at the federal level. Really, Caltrain grant issues being the first, really, but then even in the high-level budget the president's put out, there's sort of a significant reduction in commitment to transit, and really suggesting that the federal government need not be a partner in some of these big transit projects anymore. And as Grace said, really to get these big ones done, you need multiple funding sources, you need multiple partners to come in. So, we'll, like everyone, we'll have to wait and see. The governor did go back to Washington, met with Secretary Chow, and made the case for Caltrain specifically and for transit generally. We're certainly there's a lot of work ahead to try to shape this administration if we can, and keep a commitment to transit, and if there is to be a federal commitment, really make sure some of that is actual dollars, because some of the financing mechanisms can be helpful, and California's utilized them in the past, but financing is financing. It needs to be repaid with dollars.
I've always found that to be a problem. Yeah, the payback part is tough. Right. Yeah. So, well, Grace, you've been around a long time in transportation. You've been in the federal administration level. What's going to happen?
I think the administration will mature, and the Congress will stay on a steady track forward on infrastructure. Education, infrastructure, and then technology/automation are what we need in the country to compete and move ahead. And the Congress knows that. And I think, I was working in the Senate Appropriations staff when Ronald Reagan came in, and zeroed out Amtrak, zeroed out much of the Federal Transit Administration, and I was working for the Republican Appropriations Committee, and the Republicans went back to the administration and overrode the president's veto and kind of sobered up Reagan. And by the end of that act, Drew Lewis got a nickel gas tax through, which at that time was very big and hadn't happened in a long time at the national level. So I don't think the people walking in and what they're saying right now are necessarily going to be the programs on the way out. I'm a Democrat. Please don't get me wrong. I don't want to mislead you here. But I know that, I'm fairly alert as to what's going on there now. But give them some time. The department's not staffed up. At some point in time, they're going to realize they have to staff up. They haven't even put nominations forward. Clinton was very slow to get his in. I was in the Clinton administration, and it took them a long time to get started. So I think we don't know in that regard. And I think infrastructure is eternal in a lot of ways. And when you start to let it, deteriorate, it sometimes you have to reach a crisis before people address an issue. It's unfortunate, particularly in transportation, because when you when you fall off that curve of the fitness of the program, it takes you 4 to 6 times as much to bail yourself out. So thank you again, Assemblymember, for stepping up to the plate, because we're catching the infrastructure before we have to pay so much to bring it back. So we've done in California what they haven't yet realized in Washington. And I think that takes local government and business going back to Washington saying, sober up, people, it's time to move on. And when they get that message, I think they'll act, and I think the president will follow the Congress. How's that?
I'm with you.
Okay, boss.
Thank you so much, Grace and Brian, for being with us today and for sharing your experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jimmy. This way. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you.
So, I think we should give another huge round for our panelists this morning. What I'd like to do now is invite up Sheila Gilson, Kaiser Permanente's Senior Vice President and Area Manager, to make an announcement. Please stay seated. We're fine on time. Everyone take a deep breath and relax.
All right. Good morning. I'm Sheila Gilson, Senior Vice President for Kaiser Permanente in Redwood City. We are once again proud to sponsor the Progress Seminar. At each table, there is information promoting our annual Thrive Walk, which takes place early tomorrow at 7 a.m. For those of you who are new to the Progress Seminar, and I see by count there were a lot of us that are new, we meet in the hotel lobby at 7 a.m. sharp, and we're going to take a nice walk down to the beach. Back by 8, so you can shower and be ready for Sunday's program, which starts at 9 a.m. Instead of providing a giveaway today, I'm so excited to share that Kaiser Permanente will be making a $2,500 donation to Heart of San Mateo County. So, as some of you may know, Heart supports a variety of housing options at all income levels. And to date, they've invested $12.4 million to fund over 950 affordable homes in our community, which is so important. So if you look at your table, we have some information regarding Heart. Please consider supporting the great work that Heart does to address the critical housing shortage facing our peninsula. And I hope to see you tomorrow morning for our annual 7 a.m. Thrive Walk to the beach. And thank you very much. Have a great time.
So, a couple of brief announcements. First of all, and I'm not sure they're in the room right now, but I hope they can hear me outside. This Progress Seminar is 48 years old. It would not be done, and I'm going to repeat myself, not be done without Amy Buckmaster, Carolina Webster, Samantha Maloa. That's your team that puts this all on. We're really lucky because they're an awful lot of fun too. So, these are your microphones, folks. People for years have been asking for them in the breakout sessions. So guess what? Your wish has come true. They will be decorated with Facebook's logo, and as you saw me do before, and Bill, I'm going to do this right now, in the breakouts, you just toss them. And you ask your question, and then you toss it to the next person. So microphones are there. If you notice this morning, Peninsula Television is filming the general sessions as well as certain breakout sessions. You'll be able to see it on the Penn TV website. You'll be able to see it on your local cable channels, 26, 99, and there's another channel which somebody can just call out. Your Wi-Fi password, we have special Wi-Fi that boosts things this morning. The password is Progress Seminar, all lowercase, so easy to follow. So, here's my required announcement. All of you have been assigned 4 of 5 breakout sessions. Okay, and I see the folks that have been here before laughing. Those, for the new folks, are your assigned sessions. Unless you've hooked up with one of the old timers who tells you to go wherever the heck you'd like to go. So just be clear, when the room gets full, you can't get in anymore, no sitting on laps. Just want to be clear. Okay, so keep that going. Rooms 1, 2, and 3 are to your right when you head out. 4, 5, and 6 are to your left. I encourage you to come back for Victor Davis Hanson from the Hoover Institute at Stanford as our lunch speaker. And there's one other thing we all ask you to do. Download the app Bitmoji. create your own Bitmoji, and you too will have your picture like I do in the program. Have a great morning. Go forth and enjoy.